Well, in Washington for us now, Daniel Markey, former US State Department expert on Pakistan and author of a new book on the future of the US-Pakistan relationship called No Exit from Pakistan. Daniel Markey, grateful to you. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. So, what do we make of this supposed assurance that the US had given that there would be no more drone strikes, and then there's one kind of within 24 hours?
Well, it certainly doesn't look good for Sartaj Aziz, Nawaz Sharif's advisor on foreign affairs, to have come out and have said this just the day before this latest strike. It also wasn't a very clear statement from him to begin with, what exactly the assurance was. And the lack of clarity there plays into a broader Pakistani narrative about the fact that the Americans aren't being straight with them. And raises greater concerns, and that plays into the hands of individuals like the political leader Imran Khan, who's been very critical of drones for some time now.
Does it seem plausible to you that the US would have given that assurance?
Not exactly. I think that the United States probably would have suggested that there would be a limited number of targets that it would go after. And that it might attempt to draw, and certainly has said publicly, even Secretary Kerry has said publicly, that they were attempting to draw down the numbers of strikes, the intensity of the strikes, but to rule out categories of targets like the Haqqanis, that doesn't strike me as all that likely to have happened.
I mean, what is America's endgame desire in all of this? Is it that the Pakistani government does a deal with the Taliban?
Well, I think it's important to recognize here that we're talking about some different targets in order to answer that question. You know, you've got the Pakistani Taliban and Haki Mullah Masood, the former leader of that, who the Pakistani government said that they were trying to do a deal with. That, in some ways, is quite separate from the Haqqani network, which was apparently attacked in this latest strike. The two are linked. The Haqqanis, in many ways, are allies of the Pakistani Taliban, but they're not identical. And the Pakistani government wasn't talking about doing a deal with the Haqqanis. In fact, here in Washington, many people see that the Pakistani government has, for a long time, been at least tacitly, if not actively, supportive of the Haqqanis. So there's a distinction there. I think Washington's end goal, though, with the Haqqanis, at least right now, is to put a great deal more pressure on them, as much as is possible, in the context of the drawdown, the military drawdown from Afghanistan, as a means to help support the U.S. effort to leave Afghanistan less prone to future attacks from the Haqqanis. So if they can weaken them now, I think they see that as helping to secure greater stability down the line inside of Afghanistan.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you've got these two kind of overlapping circles, haven't you? Those separate countries. The problems, you know, what happens in Pakistan that has a direct effect on what happens in Afghanistan.
No, that's exactly right. And the Pakistanis reaching out to their own Taliban is one storyline. And the concern here in Washington is that they may have been attempting to cut a deal with the Pakistani Taliban. There's no evidence so far that the Pakistani Taliban would have lived up to such a deal, despite the claims of Imran Khan and others in the opposition in Pakistan. There's no sense that that would have necessarily also led to greater stability down the line, either in Pakistan or in Afghanistan. So there's a great deal of skepticism here about the prospects for that diplomacy inside of Pakistan. And because of that, I think there's been a willingness, certainly by the White House and apparently the CIA, to continue these kinds of drone strikes, even when they are unpopular in Pakistan more broadly.
So, well, let me phrase the question slightly differently. Is America's policy to scupper a deal between the Taliban and the Pakistani government?
I think America's policy is probably, if I were to guess, a more narrow one than that. It is to attack targets, whether Pakistani Taliban or Haqqani, inside of Pakistan that they think are threatening either directly to the United States or to Afghanistan in the future. And if, as a consequence of that, these peace talks are scuppered, well, apparently that's a price that Washington has been willing to pay.
Yeah, and just in terms of Afghanistan, while I've got you there, I mean, I know that Pakistan is your area of speciality, but I'm sure you dealt very closely with. I just wonder what you think will come out of the talks there over whether you maintain U.S. troops in the country.
Well, it looks like right now that that Afghanistan is easing its way toward endorsing a bilateral security agreement through in the context of this broader Loya Jirga that President Karzai has summoned. But there's always a chance for drama. And the latest step is that President Karzai has said that that deal ought not to be signed until after the next presidential election, which is something certainly that the White House will be quite unhappy with. They had wanted to cement this deal so that they could make their plans for the numbers of troops that would remain in Afghanistan. So there's still, I think, a lot of mystery and potential drama to come. But I think here in the States, the hope is that Washington would be able to keep somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 forces there and have an Afghan endorsement of that strategy for at least several years to come.
Daniel Markey, really interesting to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time and coming to talk to us here on Global. Thanks.